Hey everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of the Empowered Grind, where Matali and I are going to go into some actionable tips that can help you in this current state that we're in, with multiple layoffs going on, a lot of uncertainty with the economics of things. And we came together and realized that for the Empowered Grind this week, it made sense to talk about some actionable items that people can actually use. Matali, what do you have to add?
I agree. I'm starting to see a lot of layoff notifications especially on my LinkedIn. I'm starting to see a lot more of open to work signs. Some of the companies actually had massive layoffs last week. There are
Mhm.
more coming this week and into next week. So we thought it would be a really good idea to just start talking about networking and how to leverage networking in your search, or even if you're not looking, how networking can be helpful in helping somebody else. Maybe if you're not looking, you can help someone else connect the dots and help them through it. And things like that always come back full circle. So I'm a firm believer that we should always help and where we can. So that's what we are going to talk about today.
Absolutely. So, Mitali, how long have you been networking for?
I have really started networking for now 7 months. I used to do it a lot more a couple of years ago, before COVID at least. After COVID, things changed. I never really picked it back up, and I had to put myself in a situation where I was a bit uncomfortable because it was starting over in a sense, but not really because I did it before. It was just the fear of how will it work out? How will I do it now that COVID is behind us and we're in person? So it was 6 months ago, 6 to 7 months ago now. Yep.
Well, looking at that, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners can agree that just the landscape of what it looks like to network these days is so different than pre-COVID. We've really started to encompass that virtual lifestyle. And the same goes for networking. It's not uncommon to reach out to somebody in California if you're in Texas, or Idaho if you're in New York. I mean, any state combination, right? But the truth is, these people have a lot of knowledge and they have a lot of connections, and you never know where that could land you. So you're no longer looking at this small area to network in person. It's just a whole new world of opportunities out there, which, if you've only started networking again for the first time post COVID, can be really startling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think COVID helped in ways in figuring out how to do it differently. And when you can't go to events, what do you do? So also helped me become more creative in my techniques and how I, go out and ask, like, and the types of questions also that I ask, right? So it's been more helpful. Now I feel better networking because I'm not going and asking for an opportunity, or I'm not going and just asking for things. It comes more naturally. It was always natural, but now I have utilizing LinkedIn especially and other online platforms. You can now, like you said, have more outreach. It's not just in the area that you live in. It's not just in New York. It's not just in New Jersey. It's not just in Connecticut or Texas or Florida. Now you can go anywhere, and that really expands the reach that you can have.
Absolutely. I have contacts that I've never met in person, or I did meet in person like 2 or 3 years
Ah,
after I had
right.
talked with them. I started networking in 2020 when I was working really hard to find an HR centric job. I mean, realistically, aspects of HR are done in so many different jobs. It's just that HR usually has a different way of stating it on a job description or describing what they do. And I think that's, just the nature of the job. We're doing a lot of operations, we're doing a lot of finance, we're doing a lot of these pieces that come together to make HR. But sometimes it's just hard breaking through with that, because with my education background, I did so much HR stuff, but I had to learn how to network my skill set to show that I could do the job and that I wanted to do the job. And that was honestly, it was a real learning curve. At first, I was like, I am a teacher. And then I was like, no, I'm an HR professional, not a teacher doing HR. So it was a really weird transition period, especially to learn how to present that to other people, especially people you didn't know and might not even be in the same state as you because you're online. It's a bizarre world out there.
Exactly. And it only takes a couple of seconds for somebody to form an impression of you. And so, how do you utilize a couple of seconds to try to connect with someone? Long-term relationships take longer, but it starts off initially with that. And how do have them on board and interested in what you're saying? And also vice versa. How do you find connections that are interesting to you and the things that you want to do or you may be interested in or you want to learn about? So it's definitely different in that
Well,
sense.
we even met through networking. I met
Yeah.
you and I was fascinated by your background. The fact that you had all these different leadership positions before you had gone to school, which I know from being a teacher, that makes such a difference in the way your education is applied. And I think a lot of students later in life don't always have I guess they have confidence, or like maybe it's like, oh, well, I was a student later, but it can be such an asset because you've got all of this experience to apply to school, which makes your networking story so much more interesting too. It's not like, well, I went to the school and had an internship, and it's like I did all these wild things.
Yeah.
I went to school. I'm here. I'm ready to conquer. Let's go. It's just such a
Yeah.
different take on things, which I think is interesting. I love when networking stories are not like run of the mill. Like, I want to hear the weird things. Tell me the weird thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm learning more and more that I network that I'm finding more people that don't have the traditional path of just
Yeah.
going to school, going to college, getting their undergrad, master's, and then going into the work
Mhm.
mode. So I'm finding a lot more people like myself now, which has been really helpful. And also helping in realizing that we can't always handle things in traditional ways. The world is changing extremely fast. I always say that. And so how do we be more creative in handling whatever issues we're having or whatever is in front of us? And like you said in our last podcast, there's
Mhm.
always ways to get to a solution. There are lots of ways to get to a solution, and there are lots of correct ways. So how do you find that way?
I think that if people, like for instance, I know Southwest recently went through a really big layoff, about 9,000 employees from what I read, that are now in a very different position than they would even think of 2 weeks ago, right? And for a lot of those employees, Southwest from what I've heard, has a great culture. I mean, there have been books written about it, it's been a case study. So looking at that, people who are in that situation are coming out into this absolutely new world of what to do, and how to market that in a way that helps them land where they want to go, even if that's the entrepreneurial route, if it's a more classic corporate route. It's a matter of crafting that story that's compelling, but also allows people to connect to it,
Yeah.
so that they're memorable. Which, I mean, if I was in a networking meeting and somebody was like, yeah, I went to college, and then like I did some stuff and I didn't like that stuff, so I did something else. And of course, that's not the exact wording that they would use, but
Mhm.
there's an art to it when
Right.
you're connecting with people. And I think that that art is just so much different because we're in the world of influencers and instant
Yeah.
gratification, and we
Yeah.
need to make those impacts like really quickly when we're in a meeting. Or sometimes people are just like, okay, whatever, it's not interesting, I won't remember this.
Exactly.
It's tough.
Yeah. And also how much things have changed, right? Like, so, like you talked about everybody at Southwest that got laid off, they may have been there for 10, maybe 6, 10, 15, 20 years, right?
Yeah.
The time doesn't really matter, but things have changed so drastically now, where it's not about just applying online and getting that call. Now, if you are to look at an application that's listed on LinkedIn, most of them will say 100 people have already applied to it, even though it was posted like 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So
But
they,
even then, if it's an easy apply, you can
right,
almost
exactly.
guarantee that like
Yeah,
3/4 of those don't count. Somebody's like, yeah, I took a finance class. I'm going to be the CFO for
yeah,
sure. Let me put my
exactly.
application in, right? I mean, that happens. It
Right,
does.
exactly. So I think just changing the way we perceive our job hunt is very different now. It is now more about how do you talk to human beings? How do you make that connection so that you're you're able to get an internal referral, that you're able to talk to maybe the direct hiring manager and learn more about the role and then apply that way. So having these conversations up front may be more helpful than blindly applying online. I absolutely think you should definitely do that too, but this is also another thing you should be doing.
Yeah, it definitely makes a big difference. And I think it makes more of a difference now because that traditional application process, it still works. People
Right.
still do get jobs. I'll be honest, as a recruiter, for part of my work, I will go that traditional route of screening resumes and doing the phone screens and all that. But it's so much easier to get that initial phone screen if it's a referral. I know a lot of recruiters will actually do a phone screen regardless of the person's qualifications, if it's a referral. And then if you can win the hiring manager over, you
That's it.
know,
Yeah.
that's it. It's
Yeah.
not easy,
It's
but it's
not.
making
Yeah.
those impressions
Yeah.
and
For sure.
almost like including the fun facts, including the
Yeah.
personality,
Yes.
and not, there's a fine line. And I always have a hard time when I'm coaching to talk about that because you want your personality to shine, but in a professional manner. And like, where is that line when you're networking with
Right.
somebody,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You know, I once was in a meeting and someone had they just talked about their dog show for the entire time. And I was networking with them about their job to learn more about what they did in corporate, but I saw a lot of dog pictures. So there is a line.
Yeah, exactly. And so in that example, when you do want to bring your authentic self, you also want to remember what you're actually here for too. Like that is also an important piece, but also don't forget the professional piece as well. Um, just to hit the nail in the head.
Yeah. There's a lot of fun times where I have brought my authentic self. So I used to travel a lot. I usually, if somebody's like, "What's a fun fact about you?" I'll be like, "Well, I hitchhiked in Kazakhstan once," which is absolutely true. I totally did that.
Yeah,
I mean, I was with somebody that I met on couch surfing, but once again, even saying I went couch surfing in Kazakhstan is usually like a little jarring. But it's not unprofessional. And if I don't just talk about that experience the whole time, it's memorable. It
yeah,
shows that I'm open to adventure, I'm open to uncertainty, and no matter what the situation is, I'll figure it out.
right.
And I think that when we're telling those kinds of things, that's a very positive. I mean, everybody has an opinion, but that's mine for sure.
Yeah, it's how you tell the story and what are you trying to get across from the story. It's the important thing to remember there.
Yeah.
So,
And go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that when people are networking now, one of the things that I recommend that honestly will probably sound a little cringy, but I still just say trust the process,
Yeah.
is making videos and sending them to people that you'd like to network with. I promise you, I did this back in 2020, and people still know me as like the video person. And even though I don't do it a whole lot now, I still will make videos occasionally. I love the podcast life. I'll make reels, all that stuff. But the art of sending somebody a video to say, "Hey, I saw this super cool thing on your LinkedIn profile and I want to know more about that. Do you have 15, 20 minutes to have a virtual coffee?" I promise you, you will end up networking with high level executives that are just intrigued by
Yeah.
the fact that you sent them a video. It's my best life hack, and I don't believe in holding things all that close if they work. So take it and run with it, y'all.
Yeah. So during COVID, I actually, I don't, now I might, this is outdated now. I don't know how many people are using the platform called Clubhouse, but they did
Mm,
have professional rooms where you can go into, and they talked a lot about bank companies, and they talked about a lot about technology. And of course, I was listening to a lot of human resources side of things. I was pursuing my master's at that point. And so, I ended up sending a message on LinkedIn to someone. They responded back with a voice note. I, till this date, remember their name, remember what they were doing at that point.
yeah.
And that one different way of responding changed the way I perceived that person now. And so, and it was so personalized. They said my name. They genuinely sounded really excited to send me that message, and it took them maybe a whole of 1 minute. The message was like 30 seconds long, but the impression it left on me. So those are some of the different ways you can tackle networking with people.
The thing that that person did right, and I can guarantee you that really great networkers do, is they feel like, even though it might not be true, they have, unlimited funds in the bank, right? They are meeting people now because they want to meet people. The job is secondary. The human connection and interaction is first.
Yeah.
And if that is the approach you have to your networking journey, the rest will eventually fall into place. And it's hard to get there because realistically, your livelihood, your connections, your friends, your family is affected. Like it is, we are not saying that it's an easy thing to do. But when
Right.
it comes to networking and you're trying to make a name for yourself in a new field, make a name for yourself so you can get the job, whatever that looks like, being genuine and authentic in those relationships is everything. It's irreplaceable.
Absolutely. I think right, like what you said, for me, just going into it, not for a reason, but just learning to get to know people, that has landed me in a position where I've been able to connect people that have been able to help each other. And of course, they're grateful to me, and they say all these, they send me all these amazing messages, and it's a feel good. But at the end of the day, it made an impact that can change their life's trajectory, at the minimum. Could they have met any other way? I don't know, but I'm glad that I was the reason that they were able to meet quicker and get to what they needed to get to faster. And it does, you just never know, right? Like my connection today can help me land a new job tomorrow, or your connection today can help somebody else land another job. So it's such a web. And when you have that network, you can just call on people and just ask them for favors or do them favors. Like I'm absolutely always asking everybody I network with, I want to know what I can do for them before I can think about what they can do for me. And that's helped me so much in trying to be my authentic self, because that's just who I am as a person anyway. It's been helpful, and it's helped me network faster.
Have you
If that,
heard of the piggy bank theory?
no, tell me. I'm curious
So
now.
I used to use this in the classroom all the time. And basically, imagine you are meeting somebody for the first time and you have no interaction with them. And this is pretty much like one of my core values as I go into it, right? So when I'm talking to somebody and I have not had any interactions with them, it's a fresh start.
Mhm.
Imagine if I start off and say, "Hey man, there are office complaints. You stink. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to work that out. That's tough." How do you come back from that?
Yeah.
Your first interaction's negative. It's something they have to fix. It's effort they have to put in. That's not something that is going to be easy to rebuild. You can't rebuild trust like that.
Right.
On the flip side, I've had a bunch of interactions with this guy. Hey man, how's it going? It's a coin in the piggy bank. Hey, I heard that your family's doing really well. They're coming in to visit next week. That's awesome. Tell me all about it. Another interaction, right? I want to grow my piggy bank with
Mhm.
all my relationships and put as many coins as I can because life happens. And every once in a while, you're going to have an uncomfortable conversation. And this goes for employees, it goes for people you're talking to for potential jobs, whatever that looks like, right? Hey, I wanted to introduce you to this person. Well, I'm really busy right now. It's fine, no worries, right? I've built up a rapport with them so that it's fine that, you say no, okay, no worries. But imagine if I didn't know that person, they're like, no, I can't do it. Well, I'm gonna think they're a jerk, right?
Yeah.
I would rather spend my time building relationships and helping others more than I ever ask for anything. And if I ask for something, it's very intentional. It's very helpful in the long run, right? But with all relationships, it's just about building those interactions so that if there is something that, you need to communicate or a favor that you might need or whatever that might be, you have the rapport. I never, ever, ever would like to be the person to be like, hey, you stink, take a shower, It's
Yeah.
not going to go well if I've never
Yeah.
interacted with that person.
Absolutely. And in a way, this kind of sounds a little bit sales. I mean, I've done sales in the past, and this is how sales works. So it sounds a bit salesy, but it should also not feel that way. It should feel
Right.
like it's organic growth. You're doing it organic because you want to do it. If you're dragging your feet, this is not the right way or the right path to do it. So that, and it will come across. People are fairly smart for the most part and are able to tell when you're not being genuine or authentic. So I I would highly recommend that you be authentically present and mindful of what you're doing because you also don't want to burn bridges or do things that, will leave a not so nice, not a great impression of you because it is, like you said, it's hard to fix. Go back and fix that, right?
And you can, I mean, don't
Yeah,
relationships with family members, etc. You have a long history where if something happens, you have a disagreement,
yeah,
I know they're still going to be there. But starting fresh with somebody, it's really important to build that rapport. And the same goes for networking, building the rapport, checking in. How can I help you? It goes so far,
yeah.
so far.
So what are some of the books that you would recommend or your let's talk about one favorite book since we all don't have that much time in our hands all the time. Let's if you had to pick a book, what book do you think you would pick that you would find helpful for others?
I can't say anything and not mention two. I'll do two.
Okay, fine.
The 20-minute networking meeting,
Okay.
10 out of 10. If you're ever uncomfortable and don't know where to start with networking, because everybody says network, network, great. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What do I talk about? What do I do? That book lines it up so that you're able to just walk into a meeting gracefully and walk out of that meeting just as gracefully. And the second one is How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Mm,
That one is a really good book. If the piggy bank method had a book, I think it would be very similar to that one. So I'd highly recommend it.
yeah, I think for me it's No Excuses. It talks a lot about investing in yourself. And when you invest in yourself, networking is a piece of it. And so I highly recommend No Excuses.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we have some resources for our readers slash listeners slash real watchers
Viewers,
or
yeah,
all the people out there. But
viewers.
also, we're open to network as well. So if you are looking for some information on networking, what that can look like, feel free to reach out to us and we'll always be happy to help when we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I know we did this for a student last week, which they found really helpful. So yeah, we're absolutely happy to help in any which way possible. Another absolute important piece is to make sure your LinkedIn is updated, your profile is up to date. Try to keep your headshots as new as or as updated as possible. And yeah, those are my tips.
Awesome. Well, to our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in, and we're here to help if you have any questions. All right, until next time.
All right.